You're about to see a conversation that I had with Elaine. Elaine is now working as a software engineer, but that wasn't necessarily her dream growing up. She had her heart set on being a doctor. And Elaine was really honest and really courageous to share how depression was this shadow that she's been living with since first or second grade all the way up through high school, through college. And you'll even hear how, because of that depression and how it kept getting worse throughout the years, she made a really dark ultimatum with herself while she was in college, where she basically said, I'm either going to be a doctor or I'm going to end my own life. And I don't want to spoil the story for you, but Elaine shares with us what shifted so that at this point she's now in a relatively better place in her life and she actually cares about living, which was not the case for her growing up. And one of the things I most appreciated about this conversation is that Elaine doesn't talk about her story as though she's all better now or she has it all figured out. She's really honest about the unanswered questions that she has and still wonders about that dream of being a doctor. Um, but she's just willing to share all of that with us and put it on the table. So, especially if you're someone who is struggling with depression or struggling with these existential thoughts about your own life and feeling hopeless, I hope that this conversation gives you at least a breadcrumb of hope to keep going. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. And this is our Real Stories series. And we have Elaine with us here today. Elaine, thank you so much for being with us today as our special guest. And one thing that I always say as we start out these conversations is that although I am a psychologist and I've been doing therapy with teens and college students for more than 20 years now, this conversation is just a conversation. It's not a therapy session. So anyone who's new to this series, you're not going to hear me, responding in the way that I would in a therapy session. But hopefully this conversation is still healing. And the intention is to give those of you who are watching, give you hope. You see that you're not alone. And Elaine, you and I were chatting a little bit before I hit record just about how my intention with this series as well is not to sort of tee up conversations that make it look like someone's been through something and now their life is all better. And if anything, that's why it's called Real Stories. We're just having real conversations about the realities of what you've been through and perhaps even ways in which you might still struggle in some regard, even if things are better in some ways or worse in some ways, you still have questions that are unanswered. And I think that's just honest. So that's the intention. And you and I were chatting a little bit about how you've had such a long battle with depression and being kind of in a dark space in your life. And how far back does that go for you? How early do you remember feeling that way?
So I feel like I have kind of battled depression for as long as I can remember, really. I mean, going back to like first or second grade, like I just always felt like I didn't want to be here. I don't think I really knew what it meant to be like suicidal necessarily, but like I remember when I saw a wishing star, like my wish was always to not wake up the next day or like um I just was always very unhappy for no particular reason, I guess. And this just kind of carried throughout middle school, high school, college. I feel like a lot of maybe like minor setbacks felt enormous to me. Um, and yeah, I just think like my my brain couldn't process like setbacks well, I guess. I don't know. But
Yeah, that's such a long time and such an early age to be in this level of emotional pain and to be in that kind of dark headspace where not necessarily that you're like consciously suicidal, but the way therapists would say it, I would sometimes call it passive suicidal ideation, which is it's not a great word for it, but it just means like when people have these thoughts of like I hope I don't wake up tomorrow, or I wish that I wasn't here, or
mhm,
I don't want to be around anymore. And you had those thoughts as early, I think you said as like first grade or second grade.
yeah.
Yeah. And what's the piece about, you said something about minor setbacks, and in a way, like feeling so much bigger than it seems like you would see them now in hindsight. What do you notice about that?
I think like maybe losing a race or something for I was a big athlete growing up. So um and maybe I wasn't even like a good athlete at the time. Like I could be on like a JV team or work the C team or whatever, but like if I played really bad in a game, like it was just like, oh, like the world is gonna crash. I just felt like I'll never be good at it, or everyone is gonna like think that I suck, or I just it would like really weigh down on me, um, and not like for a day, not for a couple of days. It was you know into the next game, and it would just kind of like tumble from there, or maybe like I had a little argument with my friend where I felt like I said something that maybe wasn't called for. I don't know. But I would think about that for weeks and weeks, and it just really like put me down. And they might have forgotten about it. Like it meant nothing. But like to me, it was just, I don't know, like just little things like in my head, those are like just everyday things that could happen to people, especially as you're growing up. Like in elementary school or middle school, like, we all do and say whatever, or like, we make friends, we lose friends. It's just part of life. But for me, it was like any wrong thing that happened to me, like, I just felt like everything was going to be wrong after that, or like I could never recover from that. Um, yeah.
So things that, as you said, might in hindsight look like minor
Mm,
setbacks. They were so devastating to you
yeah.
at that time when you were younger, whether it was like losing a race or something that happened in sports. Um, you mentioned you were athletic. I was curious what sports you were involved in.
So I like in elementary school that was like cross country and track, but then I started playing softball. So I that was I was I played softball pretty competitively. Like I even wanted to play in college and everything. I ended up not, but um, so softball was like a really big part of my life from like middle school throughout high school.
So then I'm seeing how this depression and the weight of those thoughts was probably woven throughout in terms of cross country, in terms of track, in terms of softball. Like you said, like if you lost a race or you lost a game, maybe if something specific happened in a game, like that would weigh on you not just for a day, not just for a few days, but even kind of cascading into the next event in sports. And then even like a comment you made to a friend, they might have forgotten about it, but you were still weighed down by it weeks later.
Yeah. And I think also it just, especially like as I got older and, there were more uh just things to worry about, I guess. Like for me, playing softball, let's say like I make a really bad error in a game, that would make me feel like, oh, like they're going to sit me on the bench next time, or like they're not going to think I'm good enough anymore. And then this would flow into like, oh, I worked so hard to like play this sport and like do well. And like now it's kind of like, what is all that for if like I'm making this error now? And then it would flow into like, you know, a big reason of playing like sports and doing extracurriculars for me was like to get into a good college. And then it would just exacerbate into like, well, now I'm not going to get into a good college, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do that. And it would just like, so would just fall into a rabbit hole of how that one mistake will ruin my life forever. Um, so it like, I guess like I felt like I was turning things into way bigger events, um, so to speak, I guess. I don't know.
Have you ever heard people use the phrase catastrophic thinking?
Yes. Yeah.
So it just kind of reminds me of that. Like therapists talk about, we call them cognitive distortions. It's like a jargony word, but it's just that our thoughts get into kind of these like thinking traps that trip us up. And I have a lot of those that I teach people, maybe like 12 or 15 of those, something like that. But catastrophic thinking is one where it's kind of like what you're saying. We take one mistake and it feels like the end of the world to us, right? And we do experience it that way. And from a standpoint of compassion, it definitely feels that way.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it just sounds like such a pattern of whether it was like something that happened in a softball game, maybe even academically, we can get into that as well, the hopes of getting to a good college and so on. Like, it sounds like you had so much weight riding on every, felt like one mistake was going to jeopardize your whole future.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Was there any part of you that was reflecting on your expectations and like what actually happened? So, for example, you said like, oh, because I made that one error in softball, like I believed that like they were gonna bench me the next game, or I believed that everyone was gonna think negatively about me. Like, was there a part of you that was paying attention to like whether those things actually happened, or were you not really noticing?
I think depending on what it was, like maybe, for example, if I got into a little argument with my friend, and then they forgot about it, I think I would feel like, okay, like that was just like in my head, but like that was just in my head. I think it's okay now. I probably would still think about it, but knowing that the other person is fine, I think that would sit okay with me. But in other instances, it would almost like put more pressure on me because I felt like, oh, they're giving me a second chance, or like, oh, like I got lucky that time. So now I really have to like do well, or like if I make that same mistake, then like then I'm really like going to be in trouble. Or I think that sometimes it would just actually add more pressure to me.
I mean, the phrase that comes to mind is that like it almost sounds like you were like tortured in your own head. Like, um,
Yeah.
I hate to say it that way, but like, does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's like a level of perfectionism that I feel like I need to achieve. So yeah, like if one thing is bad, then I need to try extra hard to make it better, or like everything needs to be right, done right the first time, kind of thing.
If it's not done right the first time, then
Then it better be done right the second time. I don't know.
I think one of the really hard things about this level of perfectionism, and like how I said, like you were kind of tortured in your own head is like that level of perfectionism prevents us from actually experiencing that we can mess up repeatedly and still be okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, did you ever have an experience where you made the same mistake 5 times and you learned that you could still be okay?
Um, well, there was one thing that did really come to my mind, and that was that in high school, I had this goal of like achieving a 4.0 throughout high school. And that was for me personally very doable. Like I know that I know and I knew that I could do it. But circumstances my junior year, I like got really sick, so I missed like a few weeks of school, and then I struggled to like catch up basically, and I ended up getting a B plus in that class. And so I guess I didn't fail like multiple times, like that was my only B, but it like really, really ruined me for a long time. And I guess like even now I'm like, well, like it doesn't like it's just high school, it doesn't matter. I'm where I am now and I'm happy academically and whatever where I am. But at the time, like that was so devastating to me. It's actually like something that I still think about today, even though it's something so like small, and everyone will tell me like, who cares? Like it was high school, like, but I think that I really felt like I messed up so bad, like not getting that 4.0, even though in the long run it really doesn't matter. And I acknowledge that, but I guess that was like something that I felt like I really needed to achieve that, and I didn't. But it ended up being okay, you know. So
Yeah. And okay, so you went into high school with what I would call kind of like a guns blazing type of goal, like a perfectionistic goal of
yeah,
4.0. And yes, I know that above 4 is possible, but like 4.0 is kind of like the perfect down the line A's
yeah,
for the most part, right? So there's no, it's the type of goal that doesn't leave any wiggle room or any margin for things like
yeah,
getting sick or needing to take your foot off the gas pedal a little bit or having some margin in life or life happening, losing a family member, going
yeah.
through a tough quarter or a tough semester.
hmm
And it's, yeah, it sounds like you really set yourself up for this. Like it has to be a 4.0 and you still think about it.
hmm Yeah, and I think that's probably something I shouldn't do to myself, I guess, is like I feel like I make these very specific set goals. Like, I could have just made it a more vague goal, like, oh, I hope I get good grades, or like, I hope that I get into college or something. But for me, it was like, I want to get straight A's throughout high school, and I want to get into this college. Um, and even though I know that there are just some things that are uncontrollable, like in my head, I still think like I need to get this, like I need to do this. Um, but yeah, it is. I'm not setting yourself up for failure, but like again, like there's just uncontrollables, and um, there's only so much you can do at some point. So I wish that I could give myself some wiggle room. Like you said, I think that that's something that I miss.
I think we also just learn that their experience as well. I mean, none of us going into high school have a lot of experience with like how to set a goal that gives us some wiggle room, that is having grace with ourselves and is accounting for the fact that life is going to happen. Um, I certainly didn't know how to do that going into high school. So um, I can see how this happens. To say.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, I wish I could say that I learned from that, but even though, like, in my head, I'm like, I know that I was academically able to get the 4.0. Like, I do believe it was because I had that setback, and it just, you know, piled up and everything, but, like, even though I know, okay, maybe I had the capacity to do it, and it had nothing to do with my abilities, but, like, I would still set these goals for myself, and even going to college and, like, being in college, like, I would make the same goals and, um, just not like, I guess I just couldn't learn from that as also.
It sounds like it's been a struggle. I'm not going to say like that you can never learn from that. I don't want to
Yeah.
make sort of declaration about it, but it sounds like it's just been a struggle. And in high school, in college, after college, and I was curious with that goal of getting a 4.0, for example. What do you think you were telling yourself about that? Like, if I get a 4.0, then
If I get a 4.0, then I'll get into a good college. If I get into a good college, then I can get into med school. And that was also a big problem because I didn't get the 4.0. And I said, well, that's okay because I can still get into a good college. Like, even if I don't get a 4.0, maybe a college will accept me. And that's my next goal. And I don't get into the college that I want. And I end up going to another college, whatever. But I still tell myself, well, it's okay that I didn't get into the college that I want because I can still get into med school. And it just I guess I tried to, like, cover up the failure by saying that it'll be okay in the end, um, by another concrete goal, um, without, you know, thinking about the controllables in the situation. And um,
I mean,
yeah, that's
I
kind of coped with it for a long time, was just knowing that, oh, okay, well, it's okay because next time, yeah.
it's so ironic to you talk about it that way because I'm sitting here nodding my head, being like, yes, that's flexibility to say like, even though I didn't get a 4.0, I can still meet this goal of going to college, and even though maybe I didn't get into my number one dream school, like I can still go to college and have a solid academic experience, and I can still get into med school. So I'm sitting here loving the fact that you were finding flexible ways of still meeting your goals and you're calling it a failure.
Yeah. I think because at the end of the day, like, med school was my last goal. So I think I had set up these, like, kind of stepping stones. And even though those were very much goals on their own, um, like, my biggest goal was I'm going to go to med school and be a doctor. Like, there was no goal after that. I didn't care what kind of doctor I was. I didn't care what state I was going to live in or what residency, like, nothing after that mattered to me really at the time. But, like, that was like the goal. So I think, like, yes, in some ways, it is good to be able to, you know, like, see the silver linings out of things or whatever. But at the same time, I think the way that I had framed it in my head was like, it's okay because in the end, like, I will achieve that goal. But, like, there was no alternative after that, I guess. And, I think that was, like, dangerous for me.
Was that dangerous?
Sorry?
Oh, my question was, how was that dangerous? And the reason I'm asking you this is because I have talked with other young folks recently who, when it feels like their life goal is not going to happen, like they literally do become suicidal. Um, so tell us, how was it dangerous?
Yeah, because could not envision my life without being in med school. Like, I could not imagine what my life would be like after college without if it wasn't going to med school. Like, it to me, that was just not an option. And for me, like, I could not imagine that, I guess. And so I actually like decided that if I didn't get into med school, then I would also just end my life. I felt like, and I was very actually at peace with this because I felt like that was the best alternative. I like, you know, even like sometimes I would think about like, well, the logical side of me was like, well, I can like try to get a master's to like improve my resume and everything and whatever, but like none of it felt like a real alternative. None of it felt like it was going to fix the problem that I didn't get into med school. And so it wasn't until I like decided to myself like, okay, if I don't get into med school, then like I don't have to worry about anything anymore. And that was very calming to me. That was very um I felt very at peace knowing like, okay, well, if I don't get into med school, like I'm just gonna put all of this to rest. I'm just never gonna worry about this again. And yeah.
Yeah. So you felt very at peace with this kind of ultimatum that you gave yourself that if I don't get into med school, then I will end my life. And it was calming to you because then it was like, well, if I'm not in med school, then I'm not going to have anything else at all to worry
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. And I think also it also felt like I wasn't giving up because I felt like, well, I tried my best and I tried it, didn't work. So, you know, what there's nothing left for me to do. That's I think how I felt. And I think a lot of that was just growing up. I had always kind of told myself, well, like a big thing that got me through like elementary school and like middle school actually was we had a speaker like come in for an assembly and I don't actually remember what his whole thing was about, but one of his themes was like he was an NFL player or ex NFL player and he said, you can always play horribly the first half of the game, but that doesn't mean you can't come back in the second half and win the game. Like he was like, there's always a second half. Like you can always make your second half better. And so for me, I was like 13 listening to this or something. And I'm like, in my head, I thought the average age was to live was like 80. So I'm like, wow, I'm not even close to halfway through my age. So like, I was like, like I should give myself more time and like see like I knew like there's just so many more events like okay I'm going to go to high school, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to go to med school. I felt like there was just still a lot of big milestones I had to reach, and so I think that kind of kept me going for a long time, and med school was again just the end of that for me. And so like as I was actually like preparing to go to med school, Like, I think that I was just like, all right, like I lived the first half, like I did it and it's not going to be better. So there's no point in like trying to see what that second half is going to be now. Like, even though I would not have been 40, but like,
Still in the
I,
really.
like, not halfway, but to
Yeah.
me, it's like, there's nothing after that. Like, there's nothing I could do that could turn my life into something better. So why be here at all, I guess.
Yeah. So you took this message, which I love the inspirational message from the NFL player about like there's always a
Mhm.
second half. Like we all love a comeback story, right? That's a very hopeful message. And somehow in your mind, you saw it as like this very all or nothing thing of like, if I don't get into med school, all these years are behind me at this point in my life. And you had this sense of like foreclosure that why would I bother to even see out the second half of my life? Which again, I'm sitting here trying to do the math on like if people live to 80 or 100. I don't, no offense, I don't know if you're even halfway yet,
No,
Elaine,
no, not at all. But I guess
but
I felt
you,
like
your life was over. Yeah.
yeah, I guess I just felt like there weren't a lot of big milestones that I would be hitting after that, that would allow myself to turn myself around in the second half, I guess, is kind of how I felt. Like I think a lot of the like struggles that I was facing, to me, it was like, okay, well, that's just to get me to like halfway. And then after that, like I'll be happy and like I'll have a good life. But like if I couldn't set myself up for that, then like it wasn't going to happen. I think that's how I saw it.
Yeah. So, for people who are not familiar with your story, what ended up happening, like, for example, in college? Like, were you a pre med major at one point? Were you on this path of pre med and applying to med school? Like, how did that go?
hmm So I was a pre med student all the way until my senior year. I happened to like I happened to take a couple of coding classes and I did really end up enjoying it. But ultimately I wanted to go to med school. And then as I was studying for the MCAT, that's kind of when I had that decision made for myself. And I kind of knew that that was not a good way to think about life. Like I knew that that was probably not a healthy decision to have made. And so I decided to get help at that time. That's when I started seeing a psychologist, psychiatrist, um, and then I actually just like changed my whole career path and I ended up becoming a software engineer. So that's where the coding classes come into play. But I decided to, yeah, become a software engineer and pretty much put the whole med school life behind me. So I never applied to med school. I did end up taking the MCAT, but by the time I had taken it, I had already decided I'm not going to apply. So a lot of the stress from the test was taken off of me. I didn't score nearly what I wanted to, um, but that was okay in the moment because I decided, anyways, like I wasn't going to do that. Um, but yeah, so I just never ended up applying to med school at all, and um, yeah, so I guess I just now live with the I wonder what if, you know.
Yeah, kind of the unanswered question and the ambiguity about that, right?
Yeah.
I wonder what would have happened. And okay, so you you were pre-med all the way up to senior year,
Mhm.
and you did take the MCAT
Mhm.
to quite care for your score. I'm not even going to ask what the numbers were, but it sounds like maybe less than perfect.
Yeah.
um, okay, less than perfect. And I'm so glad that you somehow had a part of you that was like, it's not healthy for me to make this decision that if I don't get into med school, I'm going to end my life.
Yeah.
And I love the part of you that was able to call that out and get some
Yeah.
help. I mean, what was it like, the process of reaching out and getting some help?
Um, so I had when I was in high school, I had actually gone to a psychologist for a little bit. I actually I didn't want to tell my parents that I felt depressed. So I told them that I thought I had an attention deficiency disorder. So we had gone in and I was talking to the psychologist and then she was like, "Is there anything else you want to tell me?" And I was like, "Okay, well, anyway." So I told her, and I had actually started medication at that time in high school, but it was just so irregular and um, like the psychology sessions were just it was hard for me to plan them because I had a busy schedule and everything. So eventually just like kind of stopped going and stopped taking medicine and stuff. But because of that, I feel like I had a sense of what it would be like or like what I would need to do. So I guess um, for me, I remember I was in a parking lot. I actually remember this. I was in a parking lot at my elementary school because I just went to like hang out with my friends at the dog park or something. But I remember I like called my doctor. I have Kaiser insurance, so I like called Kaiser and I was just like, I really need I think I just really need help. And I remember the receptionist was kind of like, are you okay?" Like, you know, and I just remember it broke down. I was like, I don't think like I don't think I'm in a good place at all. Um and it just kind of went from there and scheduled an appointment and started going to psychology for a little bit. But I didn't feel that like therapy was really helping me a lot in the way that I needed it to. Um, so eventually I did kind of stop going or my sessions like slowed down. And but I had stayed on medication and I've been on that since still even today. Um, but yeah.
Well, I'm just overall so glad that you did access some form of help, and sounds like a few ways of help
Mhm.
um, over the years. And so grateful you had the courage to make that phone call to Kaiser, for example.
Yeah. I
And
yeah, him too. And I think that like the important thing is just that not everyone is going to react the same way to different forms of therapy. And like I think that in the beginning the therapy sessions were super helpful for me. But and I think I acknowledge also how they can be really helpful for other people. But for me, and I also see how like medication doesn't work for some people, but for me, like I feel like that is really helpful for me, I guess. But anyways, I think it's important to know that there are different ways to like find help and stuff.
thank you for saying that. It is something that I try to say here on YouTube, but I feel like it's more powerful coming from you, that, someone who's recently kind of had this battle and tried these approaches. I do think that so many people have the assumption that getting help for mental health equals seeing a therapist or being in therapy. And that's like one of many options is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I know a few people that like go to therapy and they refuse to take medication or they have really bad experience in medication, and I'm the total opposite, but at the end of the day it's whatever is going to help you is going to help you. So,
Well, obviously I do therapy. I have this YouTube channel, I have an anxiety program. Like I have different ways of helping people, and I've never been your therapist, but is there any way you wish therapy was different that you felt like it could have helped you better, or you just feel like therapy's not really for you?
I think because I feel like there's there's no specific battle I need to work through. Okay, we just talked about like all of the med school stuff, but
Yeah,
to me I just don't know. I don't know, like I feel like I guess I guess sometimes I think that, going to therapy is trying to uncover or um maybe like trying to like think through maybe like trauma or something like that. But for me, I think I felt like I had a very good handle. I felt like I had a very good handle on what I was thinking, what I was feeling, and I I guess I like thought to myself that I like felt very logical about things. I don't know. Like to me it was like I I know why I want to go to med school, and I know why my thought process of uh my ultimatum was not good. I felt like I had like the skills of like how to tell myself not to think those things sort of, but it just didn't matter to me. Like I just it it I don't know, I guess it just like didn't help for me. I don't know really, but like I feel like I didn't have anything to really talk through, I guess. And so for that reason, like sometimes I feel like I would go into my therapy sessions and just not really know what to say because um I don't know, like I just felt like I think sometimes it's also like, oh, how was your week or how has your 2 weeks been since we last talked? But like my 2 weeks could have been perfectly fine and normal. Um it was just like obviously in the back of my mind there was that shadow, I guess, but like there was nothing to be said about it. I don't know. That's how I felt, I guess.
yeah. That makes sense to me because you have lived with that shadow for your whole life. That in some ways it doesn't strike you as remarkable or something to talk about, um, because it kind of has been your normal. And and I also think that a weakness of therapy is that it's in its purest form, it's this like talk therapy, right? It requires people to be verbal and make a decision about what they want to talk about in their 50 minutes. And it's
Mm.
in its most traditional form, that's what it is. And it's this like insight oriented, reflective process. And I love therapy. I'm not trying to knock it, but I see what you're saying in that like maybe that wasn't necessarily what you needed at the time.
And I think a big thing as like when I was in high school trying to go to therapy, I think that I probably could have benefited from it a lot more just because maybe more things were happening in my life. I had a like a way bigger like social circle that things can just happen or go wrong in, I guess. I was just doing more, I guess, I felt like in high school. Um, but also because of that, it's really hard to get an appointment, or, I felt like my sessions were like like very far apart. Um, Sometimes I felt like I couldn't cover like things that I needed to cover all the time. So I think that that was kind of what hurt me in high school in terms of going to therapy. But I think like later, my life was just a little more like stagnant and didn't feel like I had much to say anymore. I don't know. but but yeah, so moral of that story was I feel like in high school I needed to go more often. And I don't know if maybe I just didn't think about that at the time, or maybe there wasn't enough appointments available. I'm not sure. But yeah.
It's definitely a barrier. I mean, even though like you have to schedule an appointment, like that setup I've noticed creates barriers for people where
Mm,
if they're an athlete and they're a high achieving student, they then feel like they have to make sacrifices to have these
mhm.
appointments. And then what do you prioritize? And
Yeah.
it's really hard. And it's hard too because families have to work their schedule around that, and finances around that.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And, I mean, from the way that you were talking about it, it sounds like medication has been relatively more helpful than therapy
Hmm.
for you. Can you say a little bit about that? Whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. So I feel like I know the medication is helping because I don't fall into those rabbit holes, or I don't have like the catastrophic thinking as much. And I'm very aware of like, this is something that would have sent me in a spiral 5 years ago. This is something that I would just not recover from for a while. Um, but now it's like I can acknowledge that, but I don't go down those rabbit holes, or I don't, it doesn't like really affect my life anymore. And it's like I can feel sad about something, but again, like it's not the end of my life, and I don't feel that way. Um and I even like I used to, when I was like, or before medication, like I could, even if I was like having, a good, I was like on an up or something, like I could think myself into like going back down into depression. Like I could think about a feeling and just feel it, and it would really, like I could just put myself into a bad headspace for sure. Um but now I don't really feel like I can do that. It's like I feel like I can like see myself. It's like I'm like looking at like an old memory of myself. Like I can see myself and how bad I felt and how miserable I was at a XYZ time. But like I don't feel that anymore, if that makes sense. So like whereas before I would think about a memory and I would feel that same pain, like now I think about the memory and I'm just thinking about like this is how I felt, not like I feel that now. Um so yeah, I think that that's very um, telling, I guess. And I also like, this could be, I guess, due to like a number of things, but now I used to just not really have any regard for like my life and like my body, in terms of like I would, you know, not wear my seatbelt because I'm like, well, if I get in a car crash, like I would love to die. Like I don't, like why would I like be safe? Like I think I would just put myself in like risky situations like that. Just but now I feel like, oh, like I need to put my seatbelt on because I don't want to die. Um, and I've like noticed that switch in mindset where like I do care about living now. Um, I definitely feel like I don't want to die anymore, and that's like not something I could have said my entire life almost. So, um, yeah, that's good.
That's that's profound. I mean, you're talking about a literal life and death difference.
Yeah, yeah.
Why do you care about living now?
Um, I think I think because like I I guess I just like want to like see the next day. Like I want to like see my friends and I want to like see my family. Not that I didn't before, but like now it's like, I like care about how I fit into those relationships, I guess. And like, I feel like I want to know what the day has to bring to me, sort of thing. Like I don't just wake up and want to go back to sleep immediately. Like I want to, you know, I don't know. I just feel like I want to see what the day brings me, I guess.
You sound like you want to see what this day will bring, and you sound
Yeah.
open and curious and like you're wondering rather than just wanting to go back to bed, go back to sleep, or not be alive.
And I think that a lot of it too is like truly like living in the moment. I think that that's really cheesy, but I think that that mindset has actually helped me a lot because um as you could probably tell, like before I was always thinking ahead of the future. Like I need to do this now so that I can do this later. Like I need to get good grades so I can get into good college. I need to get in a good college so I can get a good med school. And that was like always, I guess I just always had that forward thinking. But now it's like I'm just I'm just here. I'm just here and I'm going to work and, you know, living. I'm not thinking like obviously like I have, you know, goals like I want to have a family and stuff like that, but it's not like I need to like go out so that I can meet my husband and become and like have a family. It's very much just taking it like one day at a time. And again, like so cheesy, but like it really I think is important, especially if you are someone who has an issue of like idealizing your future life. It's a lot better to kind of just live in the moment, I guess. Yeah.
Sometimes things that you might think are cheesy are just true, right? I guess my perspective is that we can only really handle one day at a time as humans. And so uh, that's kind of what we have capacity for. I mean, I certainly want people to have hope for the future and think about the long term to the extent that they need to,
Yeah.
but very like I guess my wish is that people could do that very like open-handedly and holding things lightly,
Mhm.
rather than like it has to be like this or else.
Yeah.
This just was like a very different type of tentative sketch of what the future might be like. And if it's not
Mhm.
exactly what I thought, that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm curious, oh, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, no, no. You're good.
I'm curious, like, if someone was on this call with us, and let's say they were in high school right now, and they have something very specific that they want to be in their career, and they were to say to you, like, if this doesn't happen, it's all over for me. Like, what do you think you would say? And they're asking your perspective on that.
It's hard because I know immediately I would try to talk through the fact that things happen out of your control. Like I know that that's what I would tell them, but I also know that I did not care for those things at the time. Um, I guess like I try to think what what would I have had to hear to avoid like the pitfall that I had. Um, and I truly do not know the answer to that. Um, because again, I would for sure just say like, in terms of like med school, it's like there are so many people applying to med school, you just might not get looked at. Like that has nothing to do with you. But truly you just might not get looked at. Like, you know, but I know that that didn't matter to me. Like I still thought I had to get in. Um I think maybe something I would say is like just try to do other things. For example, like I found software engineering, and even though I kind of found that because I thought, well, if I, start doing some programming, then that'll improve my resume to get into med school. That is how I looked at it. But I know that like going into college, I had kind of thought about like, oh, like engineering would be kind of cool, but I want to go to med school. And like, I think maybe I would have tried to convince myself to just try it if I was interested in it, like at all interested in it, um, just to have options, I guess, because I think that that is really important, especially when it's this or nothing. um, you know, having some sort of backup um, is important. But I also know that, some people just have no other interests and like maybe nothing sounds fun to them except being a doctor. And I also get that. So I don't know. Like I think that I really don't know what would have helped me um growing up. Um yeah, I don't. I wish I knew, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, that's really honest. I wish
Yeah.
I knew too, and I think it would differ for every
Yeah.
person. For
Hmm.
each person watching this, like it's going to differ for them as well. I mean, there's a part of me that knows that for a lot of the young people I work with, like they need to know beyond any doubt that I believe in them and that I'm for them, no matter what they decide to do,
Yeah.
and that they can do anything they put their mind to. And there's a part of me that wants to say, keep your options open, but like, it's hard to say that because I don't want them to hear that as like, I don't believe in you or
Yeah.
I don't believe in this dream, right? Because I do. And I
Yeah.
want them to shoot for the moon. I absolutely
Yeah.
want that. And at the same time, I don't want them weighed down by, if there's a million options in the universe of what someone can do when they grow up, I don't want it to be this one pinpoint idea that it has to be that. And if it's not that, it's
Yeah.
nothing, you know?
Yeah. I think it's a really hard thing because at the end of the day, like you can only live once. So I think that that's another thing that a lot of people struggle with, myself included, going like in high school and college is like, well, I only have one chance to go through college and one chance to go into med school. Um, but even that's not necessarily true because you could always go back to college. You could always switch your career. I went through my whole academic life thinking I was going to go to med school, and it wasn't until the very last semester and a half that I decided not to do that. Um, and I think, yeah, it is hard to it's hard because you put pressure on yourself, like you want to get a job right out of college. You want to do, you just feel like you have no time. And like I think that's really valid. Um and I don't think there's a easy way to navigate that either. But I don't know, I guess like we were talking about earlier, that even though I like what I'm doing now at software engineering, like I truly like really like my job, and I'm making actually like more money than I would have if I was in med school, of course, because I would be in school. Um, so like on the surface, my life is a lot better than it would have been, but even now I still think about like what if like even though I still think about like I feel like I kind of gave up on going to med school, and you know, part of me feels like I kind of just ran away from my problem. But at the end of the day, like I'm just kind of okay with it, you know? And I don't know if, like, I think that that's just like something I can and will have to live with, unfortunately. But um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you looking back at that decision, the kind of the fork in the road of sticking with the idea of going to med school and applying versus becoming a software engineer. And perhaps there were like many other paths, I want to say, but I hear you looking back at that and still processing, maybe even with a twinge of regret, like what would it have been like, or should I have done that, or what? I wonder what if. Uh, and I think that we do that with decisions that we've made. Um, and I trust that into the future, as months and years go by, you'll have different ways of looking at it. And, you know, life is funny. It also doesn't mean that because we've made a decision that that's what we're going to do forever. Um, I can say that my own life has taken me down paths, either through decisions that I've made or circumstances that have happened where like I never would have expected those things to happen. And in some ways, there's dreams that I had to let die.
Mm,
In other ways, there's dreams that I never had for myself that have come true. Um,
yeah.
and life is just funny that way. So sometimes dreams, like when you have to bury a seed in order for the seed to actually grow, sometimes dreams have a weird way of resurrecting themselves. And when I say it like that, I'm not even trying to imply that you'll be a doctor. I mean, if you decide to do that someday, you still could, right? But what I mean by that is like there might be ways in which what that meant to you uh, might come back to you in ways you don't expect. Whether it's because you wanted to help people or you wanted the title, the role, or the expertise or the knowledge. There's creative ways in which life can kind of bring that back to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true.
Um, I had another thought about this, but I think I lost it. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about all of that? What I was saying?
Yeah. So this is actually very fresh to me. So um we had also talked about like my parents, like wanting to make my parents proud because my dad is a doctor, and I really wanted to go to med school for myself, but I think part of me also wanted to like live the legacy, continue my dad's legacy of being a doctor. Um, and obviously that didn't happen. I'm not a doctor, but I think part of me did feel a little let down by that I felt like I felt like I let him down, I think. But recently I actually like got a really good job, and I was really happy about it. And I could tell talking to my dad, sorry, when I told my dad about it, like I could tell he was really proud of me. And so I think that's like exactly what you were saying, like I didn't get to like make him proud as a doctor, but I can tell that he's really proud of me for this other thing that I'm doing, right? So, yeah, I think that that's exactly what you were just saying. So yeah, that this just happened like last week. I called my dad, so
Oh my gosh.
funny that you say that now. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's, if part of what was underneath wanting to become a doctor was like, then I'll make my dad proud. There's this other way in which he's really proud of you, right? And it didn't have to come through being a doctor. Like he is proud of you. I can tell.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that, I don't know what you would say, like meaning or that fulfillment or that satisfaction can come in a different way than what you were expecting or
Hmm.
hoping.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like living proof of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as I told you, I do have like a final question that I tend to ask people. But before I ask you my final question, is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you'd like to share or that you'd like to ask before we sort of draw the conversation to a close?
um, I guess like one thing that I would like people to know is that like I don't think there always has to we kind of talked about this, but it's like I don't think there always needs to be a reason for someone to feel depressed. And I wish that was something that more people knew, because I think one of the most hurtful things for me um, growing up was like, you have so much. Like, why are you sad? How could you be sad if you know, have a good family and you do well in school? And, did, I was very fortunate with the way I grew up, but yet I still felt like just, I was just never happy with what I was doing, who I was. And I guess that would like just be something that I want people to know, that, you know, there doesn't need to be like an event or something that makes someone feel so down, because there was a lot of times where like I just so desperately wanted to trade places with someone because I felt that I wasn't worth like having what I had, because I was like, like I'm so miserable yet I have this, and like that's just so unfair. And like I would have done anything in my power to give that up for someone else. But obviously that's just not really possible sometimes. Um, so I guess for anyone watching this, like just knowing that it doesn't always have to look like what you think, you know, it would look like for someone to be depressed. I think it's really easy for people, kids, teens to like hide their depression. Um, and I think that's a very scary thing for parents, actually. Um, so, like, I guess, I don't know, it isn't always what it seems on the surface. And also that, like, knowing that depression or many mental illnesses are just not, um, like, they don't always happen for a reason. Like, they don't always need a reason, to be. I think that that's important.
It's so important because that's been a source of pain for you. You mentioned that to me before our call that like you felt like you were depressed for no reason.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I think that's a really important message that you're sharing with us that the surface of someone's life, it's literally like don't judge a book by its cover, but the surface of someone's life is no indicator as to whether or not they're going to feel depressed. It doesn't necessarily, this is going to be an unpopular message, but like it doesn't necessarily matter
Yeah.
what their family life looks like or who their parents are or what they have or where they grow up or there's a code or whatever. Like depression just does not discriminate, unfortunately, in that way. And
Yeah.
uh, it can happen for no understandable reason.
Yeah. And I think also, like, not comparing depression between people because it's not ever going to look the same. And um, it's just not going to look the same. And I think, like, you don't have to be suicidal for depression to be a really big issue. And, like, just because, I don't know, I think that there is some comparison that happens with mental illnesses and maybe like, oh, like you must not be that depressed if you're not hurting yourself or something, but that's like so far from the truth. Because I think people just handle things differently and you can't compare between people.
There's no comparing. And comparison is just a liar, right? It's just a illusion, I think. Because yes, some people who are depressed self harm, some people who are not depressed self harm.
Mhm.
Someone could be in a profound depression without self harming. Um,
Yeah.
there's just there's no comparison.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it can look different for everyone as well.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, anything else that you want to say or that you want to ask? I ask our question.
No, I think that's pretty much everything.
Okay. Um, Final question is: what do you wish you knew when you were younger?
I I mean, I guess we kind of talked about this, but like I wish just kind of lived in the moment a little bit more. I think even I don't even like when I was in a really bad spot, if I had a really good day, I would just try not to absorb it because to me I was like, well, I'm just going to be upset tomorrow, so like what's like I don't want to enjoy this too much type of thing. But I think that probably took away from like maybe some experiences I could have had, or just like feelings of happiness that I probably needed. Um, and I think a lot of that came from my forward thinking of like, don't enjoy this too much now because a few days later, like you're not going to have this and you're not going to be happy. But I think allowing myself to just be happy in the moment, um, I think is important and a way of, I guess, just trying to be present for, um, trying to be present for the day, I guess. And then obviously just not giving myself concrete goals. Um, I think it's really important to have goals. Um, but I think that I could have framed them differently in my head, or um, gone about achieving them differently, I guess. Um, yeah. And also that being 20 is not half of my life. Still got another 20 more years.
Yes, and many, many, many more. I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Elaine.
Mhm. Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.